With the remake of Persona 3 just about to come out, did you know that most people have not played the game that launched one of the most successful and stylized games in history? While this series started as Shin Megami Tensei, the Persona series is a spin-off, and aside from some connections, I'm pretty sure you don't need to play any of the Shin Megami Tensei games in order to enjoy Persona 1. So, let's see if Persona is worth it. So I have a confession to make. This is not my first Persona game. And can you guess which game I started with? I mean, I opened up with 3. Maybe I played the more popular 5? No, it was the rhythm game for 3, Dancing in Starlight, Dancing in Moonlight, whichever one it is. Yep, so I'm completely qualified to talk about the Persona series. Persona came out in 1996 for the PlayStation 1, and when this was ported over to the West, it had a name change being called Revelations Persona, dropping its association with Shin Megami Tensei. This localization is fraught with problems, from strange name choices to an entire second route being cut. To rectify this, a port of this game was made on the PSP coming out in 2009, which had an updated script, newer graphics, and even restored that second route. But it also had its own problems. The main one a lot of people talk about is how the new soundtrack is not as good as the old soundtrack, and honestly, that's up to you, but I still think it's the most definitive way to play the game with all of its quality life improvements, and it is the version that I eventually played. But what's happening in Persona? Well, you play as a silent protagonist who is at St. Hermelin High School. Along with your friends, you play a Persona summoning game. It's like Bloody Mary that kids play, but it actually works, and something supernatural happens. Many of you are transported to the realm of the Persona, and an entity named Philemon tells you that you have a strong identity, so he grants you the use of Personas. Whatever that means. Well, since you kind of passed out during this, you end up going to the hospital to get checked out and to see your sick friend. But then, disaster strikes. The world is completely changed and altered, and now monsters roam the halls. Well, it's a good thing you just got those powers to summon Personas! These apparitions represent you in some way and give you magical powers to boot. Now from here, you have 2 paths. The first is the Sebek route, where you need to find out what's causing all of these demons and all of the bad stuff happening in town, and try and stop it. The second is about the Ice Queen, where you need to stop a curse put on your school. So what will you choose? Save the world or just hang out at high school? You know, that's kind of your only choices in this game. Persona is a mix of a few different gameplay elements, as is true for many JRPGs. The first is exploring the world. So there are 2 types of exploration, 3 if you count the map screen, I guess. So you can walk around many of the locations and talk to people, which is very typical of just about any video game. You can also move a cursor around the map screen in order to get your destination, but there's blocks and monsters and other things in your way, so you'll have to figure out how to get to your destination, including sometimes going into a dungeon. Inside of a dungeon, the game becomes a first-person walking maze game. You have tank controls and slowly go around each floor of a place where traps and monsters lurk. It's really handy that you have a map so you can see where you can go and where you have been. Honestly, I quite like this style. It mixes it up, but it does make all of the places kind of look similar, just boxy hallways with different textures, so the art for these places do suffer a little. It is here in the dungeons that the second main gameplay element opens up, the battles. So Persona 1 has a few different attacks that you can do based on a grid system, and depending on where you stand, that's where your reach will be determined. For physical attacks, that matters, but for magic, nah, it can go anywhere, but instead it has an area of effect that you can manipulate. In this game, you'll be using magic most of the time, so it doesn't really matter a whole lot where you put your characters, just put your melee at the front and your ranged at the back, and that's about it. While this could have had a lot of potential, it literally becomes a set and forget kind of thing. As said, your 2 main attacks are a physical one, where these high school students will pull out things like a sword or a bow to hit their enemies, and how they know how to use these things and why they even brought them to school. Oh, that's insane. The second main type of attack is magic, which has super cool and unique names, but they do take a little bit of getting used to because they have untraditional names, so instead of ice or fire, it is Bafu and Agi. Most of these also have symbols and a description, so it's not too confusing, but at a glance you might get mixed up a little bit. Having a good mix of the different kinds of magic is good, but enemies have weaknesses. But honestly, it's the nuclear magic that just does everything. It nukes everything. So basically once you've got one of them, use that the whole time. And when you do, the combat becomes pretty easy, especially when you get the spell that can hit all of the enemies on one side of the field, so you can pretty much end every battle in 1 to 2 turns. But you may not want to do that, as the EXP system in this game is a little strange. Everyone gets a blanket amount of EXP per battle, which is normal, but they also get more EXP depending on how much effort they put in the battle. So if one character is killing all the enemies, dealing lots of damage, you'll get more EXP, and that's a problem when you have one character nuking everything, because then they get 99% of the experience. Now this can be mitigated somewhat by giving that persona to someone else if it's available, so it's not the be-all end-all, it's just something that you'll have to juggle. By and large, the battle system is fine, but it's a little boring. It does appear to have depth, but most of the time it isn't there, and it feels more like a spam fest of your AoE spells, just adjusting which one you use based on enemies' strengths and weaknesses. But that's not all you can do in battles. You can change it up and talk to some of these demons, and that is a janky experience and a half. So each demon has 4 emotions, and you'll want them to be either happy or eager to get rewards from them. If they're sad or angry, some bad things can happen, like they attack you. The problem though is that each enemy has a personality and a temperament. So you have to select specific dialogue choices to get them in the right state of mind. But this can also be affected by the time of day and the moon and the walk cycle and just sometimes RNG, so you'll never know what will happen when you talk to a demon. Even if you use the same cue multiple times in a row, they can have different reactions. It really doesn't feel like the player has any control here, and it feels random. Even consulting a guide through my playthrough, I could not get it all to work because it does have that random feel to it. One thing people may find strange going into this game is the lack of any social links that have become synonymous with this franchise. Basically, you can't date anyone, but you can get to know them by talking to them whenever you see them in the world. And honestly, this is my favorite part of Persona. Even though it was usually quite short, like 2 lines or something, they add up over time because pretty much every different location has a different interaction with these characters. So if you constantly talk to them, you'll learn all about them, their personality, and how they react to what's happening in that moment. You can also get different party members in each playthrough, so this does allow for some replayability in order to get to know those characters. The last major system though are the personas themselves. In this game you have one link to a character at pretty much all times. This influences their stats and what magic they have on offer. You can get more personas by using cards dropped by friendly interactions with demons and found in chests. Whilst creating them, you can add special moves or stat buffs in order to make your persona something that you need in that moment. That's an alright system, but it does have some randomness and guesswork thrown in because you can fuse personas together and sometimes you will have no idea what the result will be. If you're going to do any of this, I would highly recommend a guide. So that's the game, and the original version, Western players could only play through that Sebek route, and it wasn't until the PSP version came out that the second quest, the Snow Queen, was restored. Each one of the dungeons in the Snow Queen quest has a different mechanic attached to it, and it honestly makes all of them unique and fun. One of the towers that you go through causes you to lose your persona, so you have to rely on melee attacks, and so damn, like that actually makes a use for melee for once, and positioning, whoa! It's wild to think that the Sebek route has a much better story, but dungeon design for the most part, while the Snow Queen route has a meh story, but a great set of dungeons. If only they were fused together, then you would have like the perfect combination, or maybe the worst one if you fused it badly. That's up to random chance! So personally, I had a good time with Persona. I liked the dungeon exploration and I loved getting to know each character. I did feel a little overpowered, but that was a welcome thing after playing a few other games around this time where I was severely underpowered. It was just nice to feel like I didn't have to try so hard to get through the game. Like I said, I also played the PSP version and thought the music and visuals were great. The new map looks loads better than the original one, but my main issues stem from the amount of grinding that needs to be done and how repetitive the game can get at times. But I made sure to play this game first, even if it's not considered to be the best Persona, because I'm a sucker for playing a series in order to see how it evolves over time and how a story is told. Also, I would guess that coming from a later game where certain quality of life improvements have been made would make it harder to go back to the original titles where they're still working things out. So, in my opinion, Persona 1 is worth it, but you have to know what you're getting into before you play it. It is nothing like Persona 3, 4, or 5, though if you play the PSP version, it will have some music to feel like those games. I really like the world that this game created. I love the characters and how strange they all are. I love the exploration and the battles, and I really liked going through that Snow Queen quest because it really does change up the game so much. But I also know that some people won't like it due to its slower pace, its awkward dungeon designs, even more if you go out of your way to talk to every party member like I did, because, you know, that's 90% of their character and you can just miss all of it. Lastly, the lore that this game is based on, with its ties to spirituality, the occult, psychology, and more, is just incredible, and I highly recommend a video by SnicketySlice, who goes into an incredible deep dive into all things Persona. It made me a fan of this game by watching that video. Anyway, what did you think about Persona 1? Did you like it? Did you hate it? And did you come here from a future Persona game, or was this your first? Technically, this is not my first, as I played the rhythm games, but it's really my first Persona game, okay? Now, I can't wait to see what the future of this series has to offer with 2 different Persona 2 games. Cool! And guys, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!